If you ask anyone to name a bad Roman emperor, one name usually tops the list: Caligula. For 2,000 years, he has served as history's ultimate benchmark for the raving, bloodthirsty tyrant. The stories of his 4-year reign are legendary. He supposedly turned the imperial palace into a brothel, demanded to be worshipped as a living god, and tried to appoint his favorite racehorse as a Roman consul. But modern historians reviewing the surviving evidence have reached a surprising consensus. The clinical diagnosis of insanity that we've accepted for centuries is incorrect. In Roman law, an insane person was not legally responsible for their actions. By labeling a ruler mad, you were making a specific legal argument that they lacked political agency and their decisions were null and void. To understand the real Caligula, we have to look past the myths and ask who actually wrote these histories. Because the story of the mad emperor is actually one of the most successful, long-running political smear campaigns in human history. Caligula grew up as a hostage. His predecessor, Emperor Tiberius, systematically purged Caligula's parents and older brothers. As the sole surviving male heir, the teenage Caligula was forced to live on an isolated island estate with the man who murdered his family. To stay alive, he adopted a strategy of total, unthreatening submission. He played the perfect, obedient sycophant, hiding his trauma so effectively that observers remarked there had never been a better slave or a worse master. When Tiberius died and the 24-year-old Caligula took the throne, the empire rejoiced. For the first 7 months, he slashed taxes, gave generous bonuses to the military, and destroyed Tiberius's secret records of treason trials. Ancient writers literally called it a golden age. Then, in late 37 AD, Caligula fell seriously ill. He hovered near death for a month, and the man who recovered from that sickness emerged with a lethal, confrontational approach to his court. He realized the Roman Senate, the aristocratic elite who smiled at him in public, secretly despised him and wanted him dead. Deciding that diplomacy was a waste of time, he declared that it would be better for them to fear him than love him. What followed was not a descent into random madness. It was a calculated campaign of psychological warfare aimed directly at a dangerous and untrustworthy aristocracy. Caligula used his unconstrained authority to systematically degrade the Senate through calculated public absurdity. Take the famous story of his horse in Citatus. Caligula didn't literally try to make the animal a government official because he was delusional. It was a vicious, sarcastic joke aimed at the senators, implying that their highest political office was so useless, a horse could do the job just as well. He requisitioned Rome's grain fleet to ride his horse across a 2-mile bridge of ships, a display of logistical control so absolute it threatened the city's food supply. This wasn't a whim. It proved to his enemies that his power over the empire's resources was terrifyingly complete. Even his supposed belief that he was a god requires a closer look. There is no evidence he literally thought he was Jupiter. Costuming himself as divine figures was a theatrical prank and a brutal loyalty test. By demanding divine honors, he forced the Roman elite to grovel at his feet, stripping away their dignity in public. These stunts successfully broke the facade of aristocratic prestige. He replaced the traditional dignity of the Roman ruling class with a state of total public degradation. So where did the stories of his insanity come from? The surviving historical accounts were written by men like Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Philo. These authors all belonged to the aristocratic class that Caligula have relentlessly mocked and financially squeezed. They were the victims of his cruel sense of humor. Decades after his death, they weaponized the written word against him. They took his vicious sarcasm, his theatrical insults, and his political theater, and recorded them as literal acts of clinical insanity. Labeling him a lunatic saved the Senate from an embarrassing truth, that a 20-year-old had successfully stripped them of their standing and left them powerless to stop him through anything but a knife in the dark. The historical record we rely on today isn't objective journalism. It is the vengeful retaliation of a humiliated social class. But Caligula's dark humor eventually pushed the wrong people too far. He made the fatal mistake of extending his cruel mockery past the politicians and aiming it at his own military officers. He routinely targeted a Praetorian Guard officer named Chaerea with homophobic insults and demeaning watchwords. In January of 41 AD, Chaerea and several conspirators cornered him in a narrow palace corridor and stabbed him to death. Upon hearing the news, the Senate immediately seized what they thought was their opportunity. They planned to abolish the position of emperor entirely, restore the Roman Republic, and reclaim their ancient privileges. The military had a different plan. The Praetorian Guard completely bypassed the politicians, found Caligula's uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain in the palace, and simply declared him the new emperor. When the dust settled, the military's choice stood. The Senate discovered that for all their talk of restoring the Republic, they possessed zero actual power. Caligula understood how to break his enemies in life, but he forgot that the literate elite would outlive him. He held absolute control over Rome, but they controlled the narrative, proving that those who write the history books can permanently turn their political rivals into monsters.